everyone. I'm Olga Yaroshevsky. I'm the Managing Director of AIBC Summit, and we're here in this amazing episode of Sigma and AIBC podcast to talk about artificial intelligence solutions in the gaming and gambling industry. So, as you guys know, the only way to keep AI from taking your job is to use AI to do your job better and enhance your business and industry. And artificial intelligence has been really a buzzing word and a game changer for many industries out there, including tech. And iGaming and gaming is no exception here. So how does AI work for gaming? And let's see. And let's ask by a wonderful person, amazing expert. I am joined today for this exciting conversation by Jesper Blach Graversen, Tech Team Lead at Mindway AI. It's a company providing first-class AI-based solutions. Hi, Jesper. How are you today?
Hi, Olga. Thanks for having me and thanks for inviting me today.
It's good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. So I know that Mindway AI actually comes from the university, from the world of academia. It's not that often that you see, sophisticated tech solutions being developed and actually coming from the world of academia. So let's start with yourself. Can you please give us a little bit of a background, who you are, what you do? How did you find yourself in this position? How did you start developing AI solutions? And what does the world of academia has to do with it?
Yes, thanks. That's a big question. So if I start by myself, I'm the tech team lead here at Mindway. Been here for a few years, working with the tech team and improving on our solutions. Prior to this, I worked within anti-money laundering for fintech, where I worked as a data scientist, so also developing on their AI models. I have a background in mathematics from Aarhus University, mathematics and economics. And ever since finishing, I've been working with data analytics, data transformations, and of course, data science. So the question of how we started is a bit special with Mindway, because as you said, we started out as a spin-out out of Aarhus University. Our founder, Kim Mouritsen, is a professor, and he's working with the Center of Neurointegrative Research at Aarhus University, and has an interest in addictions. And I guess along the way he learned that in addictions, with addictions you have gambling, where you have addiction, where you actually have a lot of data foundation to do an assessment for what an addiction might look like. So
that's actually a big problem, and it's amazing that it's being, taken care of within the walls of the university. That's amazing. Wow, fintech and AML. I didn't know about that. That's great. And do you see similarities here for the fintech and AML measures and predicting irresponsible gaming behavior?
Yeah, so there's definitely a huge overlap when you talk about so the core of it is detection. In AML, you do detection to find out what kind of behaviors does look problematic when you talk about money laundering or terrorist financing. You make a model that assesses the risk, and you do alerting that alerts whenever a very concrete behavior pops up. That's the same base behavior that we do when we do responsible gambling monitoring. We develop models that does the profiling assessment of what kind of behaviors do we see, and then we have an alerting model that's very concrete to some behavior.
It's, I think, arguably one of the most important jobs out there for the security and protection. Okay, let's start with basics. Can you describe and define a problem that AI solutions like yours are aimed at solving? You just mentioned addictions and irresponsible gaming behavior. So what is the context here? What is the actual problem that we're trying to solve?
Yeah, thanks. It's a good question. So I think a nice thing to know is that we started out of neuroimaging. So that's brain scans where you look at what does the behavior of the brain look like when you assess a problematic gambler. What's their reactions in their brain when you see them play, or when you show them an ad for gambling. That's not scalable. So we can't put a brain scanner on every player, but we can do something about assessing the gambling behavior that the players do. So what we do is that we have experts who assess the players' gambling data. So we made it digestible to the experts. Our experts are usually psychologists who has a clinical history of working with problem gamblers. But we make it digestible for them to see the data that the problem gambler plays and then assess what kind of problems do they see in the data. Ideally, you would have the clinical research expert make the assessment per player, but of course that's not scalable. And that's exactly where AI comes in. We can make our virtual psychologists, what we call it, and we can make the scalable assessments across, globally.
So it's a combination of neuroscience and then neuroimaging and also artificial intelligence techniques, right? To provide a relevant data for people who are responsible for, detecting and fixing it, the gaming behavior, right?
Yeah, so I think so. That's where we came from, but that's difficult to use in a business today. So what we have is that an operator will have players play their games, and they'll have whenever did the player play, what kind of bets do they stake, what's the size, what's the frequency, do they play at night, do they play at day, do they play weekends? All of this data is what we can visualize for the experts, and that's what they assessed to make their assessment of what looks potentially problematic.
That's interesting. So how exactly you work with gambling operators to integrate these solutions? And I would say probably that's a tricky question maybe, but what are the technical hurdles and challenges that you have faced working directly with operators?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, every operator is different. The regulatory, so we work globally, so the regulatory landscape for each country is different. The games that the operator offer are different. Some are sports betting, some are casino, slow casino, fast casino. And then there's of course also what kind of tracking does the operator have set up. We need to deliver. So the core of our delivery is that we need to deliver assessments that are viable for a problematic gambler. So it's actually usable, and that's despite that some operators can only deliver session-based data, so they can only give us the full one session data, while others can deliver to the lowest granularity of the details of the bet. And that's the challenge for us to make our models robust in very, very different settings. And that's of course an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, true that. I remember that last year for Sigma East Europe that we held in Cyprus, I moderated a session with the representative of National Betting Authority, local, and then we were talking exactly about using AI techniques for detecting irresponsible gaming behavior. So this is not only relevant for operators, but it's also extremely relevant for regulators in different countries, right? So I know it's quite sensitive, right? I think from all parties, like from you as a solution provider, and then for operators, and then for regulators, right? And compliance experts as well, getting back to AML procedures, right? So, and it's quite sensitive when it comes to data privacy. So how do you perceive complying with regulations, let's say like GDPR, right? How does that work? I know it depends on jurisdiction probably, but just share your experience, what happened with you in that sense.
Yeah, so if we talk specifically about GDPR, what we do are behavioral assessments. So we try to minimize whatever personal data is needed because what we do is looking strictly at the behavior of the player and not what type of player it is. So we have age because it's important for us to know if it's a young player because that's a vulnerable group. But beyond that, we actually don't use data that's outside of behavioral data.
So
Yes.
there are no like criteria as in gender, other than age, there's nothing, right?
No, so we have our when we have our tool, we need the RG operational staff to see some data about the player. That can be gender, but it's actually up to the operator if they want to be able to see that when they handle the player or not. It's not a strict requirement from us. We can
I
make
can't
the
help but
assessment.
ask, is there any interesting data that you can share? Maybe how countries are different in terms of, the scale of this behavior and where are the most responsible gamers and the most irresponsible gamers. I know this probably doesn't comply with GDPR, but still, it's interesting. Can you share something?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think what we have is that regulations are very very different across the countries, and we have countries like Germany and UK where we have much stricter regulations than what we see in the US or Australia. So there's just a lot of room for development for protecting the players in a lot of countries.
So there's no like significant difference, let's say, from this landscape, let's say in the US and then in Australia. No?
Yes, I think definitely there's. I don't have the numbers on top of mind what exactly the prevalence is in the two countries, but definitely we see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true that, true that. Okay, so I wanted to go back to the, tech details. We know that artificial intelligence actually needs to learn from a human, right? And this is one of the core core features of AI models. Am I right or am I right?
And also, so essentially, when we talk about AI, we talk about supervised or unsupervised. Supervised
Yes.
is that you train towards a target that you know, so that's usually supervised by a human. Unsupervised is that you provide data and then you find the context within the data. Of course, you again assess it on the backflip of it, but yes.
So what role does machine learning play in your detection algorithms?
So machine learning for us is that's the mechanics that we use to translate the expert assessments. So we have the experts who creates the labels that we need to target, which is essentially what kind of risk do we see when we have this set of behavior. We train so we train the models using that, and ideally that's something that we accumulate over time. So we offer, for our customers, we offer the pre-trained model, and we offer sort of an operator tuning. The pre-trained is based on whatever data we have accumulated so far. We trained the best possible model, but not attuned to their exact games or environment. So we offer them to tune it where we train on their exact data. And a nice feature with that is that it also adds to our general bulk of data. So we over time become more and more clever, or we learn more and more what exactly the problems can look like across.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And what's your take on the let me put it this way. This is something that we're actually going to speak about at the conference, at a bunch of conferences, even in 2025, because artificial intelligence is one of the core subjects for the summit that I host. So let's say we have this huge amount of data that AI has been processing. So what do you think happens to that data? And since you have a fintech background, do you see it should be decentralized or centralized, on the contrary?
Yeah, so we have countries where they try to centralize doing a central data storage where you can actually assess the players, across. I think that's a very, very strong offering if the countries can build that. I think there's a lot of challenges to have each operator deliver data in a format that's digestible to a common directory, but it's super cool if it's something that the countries opt in for, and it's definitely something we would support.
I agree. I agree. Which brings me to another question. I can't, again, this is something that has been on the table for a while now. AI regulation, especially relevant for EU, right? And because we've seen a bunch of attempts from different countries to maybe try to regulate this, because they just won't, countries, they do not have this option to just let it flow. So what's your take on AI regulation? Should it be regulated at all, or should it be, contained within expert communities and maybe solutions like yours? So how do we comply with this?
Yeah, so we have the recent EU AI Act, of course, that stepped into force, and I think that's a difficult question because AI works on a global scale and it's a global competitive advantage. So we see big advancements right now for big tech, especially in the US, and I think it's almost mind-numbing what they're doing and what kind of products that they're delivering. It's crazy. So I think for us, what we do is more niche and we do something where we protect players and we build an algorithm that's very hyper focused on doing this very, very specific purpose of detecting. And I don't think there's so the EU AI Act, of course, it prioritizes very certain types of detection AI algorithms. So it's biometrics or it's social scoring, and that's not what we do. So there's no regulation in that sense for our, and I think that's of course very good.
Yet, but then again, that's a question of transparency, right? First, we need to see the regulated gaming market, and then when integrating AI-based solutions, we also need to comply with the regulations in that sense. So this combines both, I guess. But again, I agree, this is a very niche thing about players' protection. Nonetheless, very, very important. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens in the US, by the way, in that sense. So let's see. So what about the real-time monitoring of gambling activity? Is it hard, like technically, is it a challenge? How do you manage to do that?
Yeah, so similar to AI, real time is a bit of a buzzword, but of course also very, very important. If you have a player playing a single session with real time, you can actually intervene during that session instead of afterwards, and the harm you can get from a single session is of course significant. Real time is something we hear a lot from our customers, but I think an important notion is that we are rarely the bottleneck when we talk about real time, because we are a calculating instance that's put here. They need to transform data from whatever the player does, move it all the way to us, have us do the calculation, back to them, and do some action upon it. So the heavy parts of the processes lies with them. It's accumulating data, it's transforming the data, sending it to us. We do a quick calculation and we send it back. So it's definitely something we offer and we can recommend, but we also completely acknowledge that it's a very, very expensive and difficult task.
True that, but important. And let's sides here. Interesting that you just mentioned. Let's say I'm a player, I'm a user, and speaking from a user experience and user interface, how does that look? How does AI detect my problematic behavior?
Yeah, so you as a user will play with the operators, whatever platform they're offering, and whenever you play, they log the data and accumulate it and send it to us, and then we have our algorithms that detects them and actions or assessments are based upon that. Potentially you're low risk and then there's you don't realize anything's happening.
Okay. So it's a bit of a hidden technique. So how do you and after the assessments are done, after the research for, let's say, for a particular client is done, how do you optimize? What are the consequences of this, and how do you optimize the user experience for them?
Yeah, so for us, the user experience are the RG personnel, the operational staff, who actually looks at the players and decides what kind of interventions are relevant to do for this player.
Mm.
So we need to have an alerting module that says this player played 3 hours during the night last night. He also has a history of concerning behavior, so maybe we should take a look at this player. That process for the RG person who needs to look at the player, open it, see the player page, and quickly digest what type of problems are we seeing, what kind of actions are relevant towards this player. That's the user experience that we need to optimize and make as smooth as possible, because you can imagine if you're a big operator, there's a lot of alerts to handle each day, so it's important that it's quickly to get the overview of the player, it's quickly to do the assessment and push an action.
That's interesting. That's interesting. This is actually very handy, I think, for most of the operators here, for regulators too. This is a, super precious data when it comes to that sense. I would ask one more question on the ethical part of it. Like, I know that the solution that you managed to develop is quite sophisticated, so it's showing very good results, but still, what's your take on the ethical part of it? So like, how do we make sure that AI tech solutions do not lead to like false positives or like target specific group? I know that you mentioned that you don't target any specific groups of people other than, trying to sort them by their age, but still, maybe from country to country different, from client to client a difference. So we don't make sure not to target like specific groups of people unfairly. So that would be, I think, the question of morals and ethics. What do you think? Does AI help, or is it like taking part in it, like playing a role in it?
Yeah, so it's of course a very important thing to consider whenever you do an AI. So when we talk about cultural bias, so what we do is that we train a model on the data we have available, and then you can imagine we get a new customer, let's say in Australia, and then we deploy that model in Australia. So now we have a whole new population, new types of games, much more prevalence in horse racing or whatever it might be. And that's, it's different mechanics, it's potentially different people, it's different cultures. So then there's a process with us and the new operator in the new country to understand, are we scoring fairly? Is the assessments that we made from our previous integrations still fair when we look at your population? And that's an ongoing task, and it's something we continuously to discuss, and they need to ask the questions, why do we see this group of people being scored highly? That's because they play every weekend, whatever it might be.
It's like a double, triple ongoing check. So you check after yourself, and then you check your own assessments, and then assess your own assessments, and then there's an ongoing thing. That's interesting. It's like a machine learning, but combining all the elements of it, both machines and human. That's really cool. So for the tech part of it, I think my last question to you would be like, what exciting things are coming for you, for your company? Maybe you've been working on some exciting research yourself lately. And what should we expect from Mindway AI? Maybe something that all of the operators and regulators should look out for?
Yeah, I think now we already discussed AML, so we could say AML is on the roadmap and something we hope to have a solution for in start of 2025. So obviously, me having a background in AML, I've been itching for us to do it. It's like I said, it's a lot of similar detection processes. Of course, now might say problematic gambling has the benefit of being sort of well-defined behavior. So you see well-defined escalations in behavior. The problems that the players usually have might be quite similar. While when you do AML, you're more in a battle with the, whoever you're targeting. They're doing the best to avoid being captured by our algorithms. And in that sense, it's a different kind of space, but it's detection and it's profiling.
This is actually very interesting. I never realized that. Let's say if you're a player, right, you don't realize that you're actually being monitored right now. Probably don't realize, right, that some AI is looking at you right now, and then they're going to assess your behavior. But whereas for AML procedures, it's a completely different thing. You're absolutely right. Like these guys are trying to escape the
Yeah.
monitoring
And
as hard as
they
they
know
can.
they're being detected, so it's a different type of game in that sense.
It's a big challenge. Do you have to use a different AI model for that?
Yeah, so yes, we definitely do, and that's a whole other challenge because you can't, in the same sense, have the psychologists assess the AML because that's, like I said, it's a changing battle. It's something that's evolving. So we need to do more of a reoccurring assessment of what's the problem or what's the behavior looking at like now. Yeah.
Right. So that would be not a group of psychologists this time, but on the other hand, group of AML experts, right, that have been manually monitoring it probably for the past several years. Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Or
Wow.
yeah.
Actually a very interesting solution, and it's great to realize that there is the same technology and the same technique which lies underneath, both processes, trying to assess the problematic behavior for players and for those guys who are trying to escape the AML procedures.
Yeah.
This is quite interesting. Well, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Jesper. I hope Mind AI does surprise us with some new findings and some new exciting developments in the nearest future. I really hope to see you and your team at Sigma events this year, next year. May I remind everybody that we have an exciting plan for 2025. We will be in Dubai, in Brazil, in Africa. We will be in Manila. We're going back to Europe next fall. We added a new location, which is in Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka. So it's a big plan for 2025. Artificial intelligence is one of the main topics that we discuss. It's a cutting edge technique. And I would say that our events is the best place to learn from the best experts and actually, maybe if you're lucky, meet with Jesper and ask him a couple more questions that I failed to ask today. So I wish you all the best. Say hi to your team. I really wish, and I hope to see them really soon at one of our events. So thank you so much, Jesper. Have a wonderful
Thank you so
day.
much.
And thanks so much for our
Likewise.
viewers. I will see you very soon at another episode of Sigma
So,
Podcast. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Jesper Blach Graversen, I'm Olga Yaroshevsky, and I'll see you very soon. Ciao, ciao.
ciao.